billionaire posted photos of his son online, and to everyone's surprise, they bore a striking resemblance to me. A paternity test revealed the unimaginable. I was the true heiress of the wealthy Wilson family, switched at birth. With a single move, I was reinstated. The fake heiress, Emma, clung to my billionaire brother, Nathaniel, crying her heart out. She wailed about how she'd never again get to eat the mini cakes Nathaniel used to crush with his Maybach just for her amusement. Nathaniel was devastated. One drunken night, he mistook me for one of those cakes and accidentally ran over my leg, breaking it. When he sobered up, he showed no remorse. Instead, he accused me of stealing the life that rightfully belonged to Emma. My ballet dreams shattered. I fell into a deep depression. My biological parents, however, were dissatisfied with me, complaining that I wasn't as cheerful or lovable as Emma. Later, when Emma's health deteriorated due to hunger pangs, the Wilson family forced me to donate a kidney to save her. You're just a cripple anyway. Why not give your kidney to someone who needs it? The family celebrated Emma's recovery with great fanfare while I, suffering post-surgery complications, died on the operating table. But fate had other plans. I woke up to find myself back on the day the paternity test results were revealed. The white walls of the testing center surrounded me, and my foster mother, Wanda, shrieked sharply. I knew it. She's not my real daughter. No wonder she's been such an ungrateful little wolf. Wanda trembled, barely able to contain her excitement. She threw the report onto the table and pointed at Jane, the elegant Wilson matriarch. Now give me my real daughter back. Jane's composed expression faltered, but before she could respond, Wanda interrupted. If it weren't for your hired nanny switching the ID cards back then, I wouldn't have raised your daughter for 18 years. You owe me compensation for emotional distress. As sunlight illuminated Wanda's spittle flying in all directions, my memories came flooding back. In my past life, Jane had posted photos from her son Nathaniel's coming-of-age party. The media buzzed about it, and Wanda noticed my uncanny resemblance to Nathaniel. Egged on by relatives, Wanda dragged me to the Wilsons for a paternity test. I'm telling you, your twins must have been switched. Megan and your son are practically identical. The Wilsons initially resisted and tried to send Wanda away, but once they saw my face, the resemblance to Nathaniel was undeniable. The test results confirmed I was their biological daughter. Wanda, euphoric as if she'd won the lottery, began demanding compensation from the Wilsons. The following evening, Wanda had pulled me aside. Megan, if the test proves you're their daughter, you better settle into your rightful place as the heiress. But don't forget, I raised you for 18 years. You owe me everything, even if you aren't their child. You look so much like Nathaniel that you can still befriend the family and secure our future. Wanda was determined to use me to climb the social ladder. When the results confirmed I was the true heiress, she could hardly contain her delight. In my past life, I had no choice. Wanda controlled my documents and threatened me with beatings if I refused. I had declared to Jane, I want to come home to the Wilson family. The Wilsons, though reluctant, agreed. They had grown to cherish Emma, the fake heiress. Over 18 years, Emma wept bitterly, clinging to Nathaniel. If she comes back, I'll have to leave. I'll never get to eat cakes crushed by my brother's Maybach again. Despite their reluctance, the switch was made. That night, Nathaniel drowned his sorrows in alcohol. Returning home drunk, he mistook me for a cake and ran me over, shattering my leg. When he sobered up, he showed no guilt. You shouldn't have taken Emma's life, he spat. Now, staring at Wanda and Jane in the testing center, I realized I had been given a second chance. I wouldn't let history repeat itself. Since childhood, I've had a passion for dancing, but after losing my leg, I could no longer pursue ballet. The devastation led to severe depression. My biological parents, annoyed by my constant tears, dismissed me as overly dramatic and lamented that I wasn't cheerful and endearing like Emma, the fake heiress. Later, when Emma fell gravely ill from starvation, the Wilson family forced me to donate a kidney to save her. You're crippled anyway. Why not give your kidney to someone who actually needs it? On the day they celebrated Emma's recovery with joy, I died on the operating table due to post-surgery complications and a delayed rescue. Reborn. I stared coldly at my foster mother, Wanda, who was eager to squeeze the last ounce of value out of me, and at Jane, my biological mother, whose indifference stung despite knowing I was her true daughter. I sneered. If I don't return to the Wilson family, what benefits can you offer me? Before anyone could respond, Emma stormed in, her eyes red with fury. She raised her hand and slapped me hard across the face. You're so materialistic. How could you ask for benefits? Mom and Dad are in poor health, and you're treating them like this. She clearly wanted revenge, putting all her strength into the slap. My face burned, swelling immediately as if scorched by flames. My ears buzzed, and the blow tilted my head to the side, strands of hair falling over one eye. I glanced around the room, noting the reactions my biological parents, shocked but entirely unbothered, my brother Nathaniel, grinding his teeth in fury, and Wanda, silently watching, calculating how to exploit me further. Not one person stood up for me. If there's no one reliable in this world, I'll have to rely on myself. Ignoring the throbbing pain, I raised my hand and slapped Emma back with full force. And who do you think you are? Without me, you wouldn't have lived your cushy life for the past 18 years. Do you really think squatting in someone else's nest makes you a real heiress? Raised in a bustling marketplace, I was no stranger to heavy lifting and had strength to spare. Emma, a delicate flower nurtured in luxury, was no match. She collapsed to the floor, tears streaming down her face as her confidence crumbled. Playing the victim, she turned to Nathaniel. Brother, I'm scared. Nathaniel didn't hesitate. He stormed over, grabbed my hair, and yanked it back hard. You're nothing but an ungrateful nobody, he spat. You may have Wilson blood, but you'll never be a Wilson. Do you think someone like you deserves anything we have? I only have one sister, and that's Emma. The sharp pain in my scalp was unbearable, but after years of dealing with street fights, I had grown resilient. I shifted my weight, raised my foot, and kicked Nathaniel squarely in the stomach. So this is the esteemed Wilson family, I said, voice dripping with sarcasm. One sibling slaps without cause, and the other pulls hair. And you claim I'm the dish Jane. I used every ounce of my strength. Nathaniel doubled over, clutching his stomach, sweat pouring as he struggled to stay upright. Jane, panicking at the sight of her children getting hurt, was on the verge of tears. How could you attack them? You're too much. I glared at her coldly, unafraid. Are you blind? They hit me first. I'm just returning the favor. And let me remind you, it wasn't my fault I was switched at birth. How dare you blame me for your mistakes? Jane flinched, biting her lip as her gaze darted away. The room grew heavy with an awkward, suffocating tension. Finally, Wilson patriarch Robert sighed and helped Emma to her feet. No one's blaming you. It's just a lot to process. You're our child. Megan, if you want to come back, we're willing to welcome you. I laughed coldly. No need. I know how much you care for Emma. I don't need your shallow affection. I won't come back. Relief washed over their faces. Wanda, however, darkened with anger. She stormed toward me, her thick fingers digging into my shoulder. Megan, what do you mean by this? Are you trying to rebel? Her sharp voice pierced the air, each word brimming with menace. She tightened her grip, and the pain made me frown. Annoyed, I shrugged her off. Do you still want money? I asked flatly. If so, wait outside. Wanda was stunned that I would bring up money so bluntly in front of the Wilsons. Glaring at me, she eventually stormed out, muttering under her breath. With Wanda gone, I ignored the disdainful looks from the Wilsons. Taking out my phone, I played a recording I had secretly made. Transfer $2 million to me in one lump sum. Secure me admission to South City's best dance academy, and guarantee my safety. Do this, and I'll leave you alone forever. I will keep the secret about being switched with Emma forever, even bringing it to my grave. Upon hearing my words, Nathaniel, who was leaning against the corner wall clutching his stomach in pain, became agitated. 20 million. Megan, do you even know your worth? That's daylight robbery. Ignoring Nathaniel, I looked up at my biological father, Wilson Robert. Spending 20 million to ensure Emma can stay with the Wilson family forever. Isn't it worth it? You should think carefully. If this news gets out and I choose not to return to the Wilson family, while saying a few unfavorable things about you in Huzhou. How much will it impact your stock prices? The Wilson family is one of the top elite families in Nanchang. Wilson Robert's business is vast, and he has offended many people along the way. There's no shortage of those waiting for an opportunity to trample the Wilson family. Wilson Robert understood the stakes. He took a deep breath, his gaze slowly scanning me from head to toe, as if trying to read my inner thoughts. As Wilson Robert remained silent, Emma couldn't hold back any longer. She suddenly dropped to her knees with a loud thud and kowtowed 3 times toward Wilson Robert. Tears streamed down her face as she cried. "Thank you, Dad and Mom, for raising me all these years. Even if I leave the Wilson family, I will never forget your kindness. Please don't make things difficult. I'll leave now." Watching her sudden theatrics, I couldn't help but roll my eyes. In my previous life, under the insistence of my adoptive mother and me, she was forced to return to her biological family. However, she continued maintaining close contact with the Wilson family. By constantly stirring up trouble, she successfully made the Wilson family despise me. Eventually, they even coerced me into signing a kidney donation agreement. All for her. After the surgery, I succumbed to an infection and died on the operating table. Emma? She only shed a few fake tears before happily moving back into the Wilson family a week later. Feigning pity and seeking sympathy has always been her forte. Sure enough, her act of kneeling and crying worked. My biological mother, Jane, couldn't hold back anymore. She embraced Emma, sobbing uncontrollably. "Honey, what's more important than Emma? It's just 20 million. Give it to her. All of it." With the 20 million transferred to my account, I didn't hesitate for a second before turning and leaving. Just as I stepped out of the paternity testing center, my adoptive mother, Wanda, blocked my path. "Well, look at you now. You've grown wings and flown off, doing everything without consulting me. I overheard everything just now while I was outside. They gave you 20 million. Huh. For the Wilson family. That's just pocket change. If I were you, I'd have demanded at least 100 million. I cast a cold glance at Wanda's greedy expression, feeling nothing but disgust. Seeing me silent, she grabbed my arm and extended her hand. "Hand over the card. I raised you for 18 years, and now it's time for you to repay me. This money is enough to bail your brother out of detention." David, the so-called brother who had bullied me for 18 years, was a notorious thug in the area. Recently, he became infatuated with a local girl and harassed her incessantly, only to be caught by her boyfriend. Their altercation ended with David severely injuring the other man, who was still hospitalized. The victim's family demanded 300,000 yuan in medical fees. Otherwise, they would ensure David rotted in jail. Despite running a small convenience store, Wanda was a compulsive gambler and never saved money. Before seeing Nathaniel's photo, her plan was to marry me off to a blind, lame old bachelor in the village to pay the ransom for her beloved son. She even confiscated my ID and locked me in my room. If the Wilson family hadn't sent that timely photo, I'd likely have already been tied up and delivered to that man's bed. Suppressing the anger boiling inside me, I mimicked Wanda's gesture and extended my hand. "Give me my ID and household registration booklet. The Wilson family promised to enroll me in the best dance school, and I'll need those for the admission process. Give me the documents, and I'll hand over the card." Wanda rolled her eyes at me but reluctantly complied. "Why are you so wary of me? Relax. I'm thrilled you're going to an elite school. Just make sure to find a rich second-generation heir to marry once you're there. You'll make a fortune for us someday." Back at home, Wanda handed me the documents, and I gave her the bank card. Thrilled, she dashed out to play mahjong, card in hand. I immediately contacted the bank and froze the account under the pretext of losing the card. While Wanda gambled away her time, I packed up my belongings, rushed to the bank, and had the card reissued. With the new card in hand, I confirmed that the 20 million from the Wilson family was secure. I spent the afternoon touring the most luxurious properties in the city, eventually purchasing a fully furnished apartment outright. To expedite transferring my household registration, I pushed the real estate agents to prioritize my case. Within 5 days, I had successfully established my independent household registration. During this time, Wanda bombarded me with calls, which I ignored. When she couldn't reach me, she resorted to sending vulgar and abusive text messages. I was long accustomed to her behavior. Finally, with all the procedures complete and my household registration booklet in hand, I breathed a sigh of relief. I called my foster mother. As soon as she picked up, she began cursing furiously. "Megan, how could I have raised such an ungrateful brat? No matter how much I planned, I never thought you'd have the guts to do this. You better not let me catch you, or I'll strangle you with my own hands." I exhaled deeply, feeling a suffocating pressure, as if an invisible hand was gripping my throat. My chest felt heavy, as though weighed down by a massive stone. I decided to confront her directly. "Mom, I'm not coming back. I'm grateful you raised me, and I'll send back the family register in 500,000 yuan to repay your kindness. But from now on, I don't want any more ties with the Meng family." Before I finished speaking, I heard a loud crash as something, probably a glass, shattered on the other end. "Megan, you heartless child. I raised you with such difficulty for all these years, and you think 500,000 is enough? Why? Tell me why." I clenched my teeth, tightening my grip on the phone. "Because, over the years, you never loved me. I've always known that you preferred my brother. The candies in the jar, the eggs in the kitchen, the new toys, and even the clothes for the new year. They were always for him. I remember when I was little, I snuck a single Oreo from my brother out of greed. When you found out, you didn't hesitate to grab a broom and chase me down the street for 10 blocks. You're so greedy at such a young age. What will you become in the future? You said. Your brother's still growing. How dare you take his food?" I was beaten black and blue and couldn't eat for 2 days. When I finally dragged my weak body to apologize to you, you were placing a drumstick in my brother's bowl, saying, "You should starve for 2 days and learn your lesson. I'm barely managing to support the 3 of us since your father's gone. If you can eat less, then eat less." I watched my brother happily devour his chicken leg, swallowing my saliva and nodding as I begged, "Mom, I won't do it again." In elementary school, I worked hard to please you, excelling in my studies, but no matter how many times I placed first in my class, you still favored my brother, even though he was always at the bottom of his. What's the point of a girl studying so much? Girls are just water that gets poured out once they're married. You should help earn money early to save for your brother's car, house, and wedding. From that day on, I understood that nothing good in this house was ever meant for me. I worked hard to carve out a future for myself. We didn't have money, so I got up early and stayed up late to study, earning scholarships every year just to change my circumstances. That's how I completed 3 years of middle school and got accepted into South City's top high school with the best grades. Even in high school, I kept my place at the top and won a scholarship in my second year. But when you took my scholarship money to buy sneakers for my brother, I finally lost it and argued with you. You responded by slapping me across the face. You eat my food and live under my roof. How dare you complain about me taking some money? If you keep this up, you won't study anymore. To force me to comply, you hid the family register. Without it, I couldn't get an ID, study, or even travel for work. Desperate to stay in school, I borrowed a friend's ID and found a job dancing at nightclubs. The places were smoky and chaotic, but the pay was high, and it didn't conflict with my class schedule. When you found out, for the first time, you patted my shoulder approvingly. "Megan, you've grown up. You know how to earn money now. From now on, you'll cover the family expenses. I've worked hard raising you for so many years. It's time for me to rest." To stay in school, I endured it. Each paycheck, I divided the money into 3 parts. One for my living expenses, one to send home, and one to pay for ballet classes because dancing was my passion. We lived in uneasy peace until my brother ended up in a detention center, and I happened to resemble Nathaniel, the heir to a wealthy family. When I found out I might be the long-lost daughter of the Wilson family, I had a glimmer of hope. I hoped my biological parents would be understanding and loving, that they'd help me escape my miserable life. But my previous life taught me one thing. No matter how grand someone else's roof may be, it can never compare to having your own umbrella. If no one will pull me out of the mire, then this time, I'll save myself. No matter how perilous the path ahead, I'll overcome it for my own sake. Hearing this, my foster mother sneered. Love you? Why would I love you? You're just a money-losing burden. What right do you have to complain? I'm warning you. You better come back right now. If you don't, I'll go to the media and expose you for being heartless. You love dancing, don't you? You want to be in the spotlight? Let's see how you'll survive when everyone sees you as a rat in the gutter. I took a deep breath, suppressing my anger. Go ahead and make a scene if you want. By the way, I recently got my hands on a video of David harassing a girl named Smile. If you're fine with him spending a few more years in prison, then go ahead. David was her precious son. As expected, she backed off when it involved him. After transferring the money to her, I ended the call. I packed the household registration book, sent it back to the general store, and immediately blocked my adoptive mother's number. Just as I finished, my alarm went off. Now that I had enough money at my disposal, I decided to resign from my job at the nightclub and stop dancing there altogether. However, the nightclub owner, unable to find a replacement on short notice, asked me to stay for another half-month to allow time to recruit a new lead dancer. I agreed. Unexpectedly, just after finishing my shift, I ran into Emma, who had been drinking there. Seeing me in my revealing dance costume and heavy makeup, she couldn't hold back her laughter. Oh my, how shameless can you get? Working in a place like this, she sneered. Good thing Mom and Dad didn't bring you back to the Wilson family. You'd have embarrassed us all. Her blatant provocation stung, but I simply patted her flushed, alcohol-reddened cheek and replied mockingly, You, an imposter taking my place and spending my money, don't find that shameful? I'm earning an honest living with my own skills. What's so disdainful about that? Emma's face instantly darkened. She bit her lip so hard it turned pale, her entire body trembling with rage. That moment, Nathaniel walked out of a private room. He froze momentarily upon seeing my outfit. Then his expression quickly shifted to one of disdain. The sight of Nathaniel prompted Emma to change her demeanor instantly. She sniffled, squeezing out 2 tears, looking as if I had wronged her somehow. Brother, she whimpered. I was just worried that Megan might encounter some unsavory people working here, so I kindly reminded her to be careful. But she turned around and called me an imposter. Hearing this, Nathaniel's face darkened. His brows furrowed deeply, and his eyes brimmed with disgust. Megan, didn't you just take $20 million from my dad? Why are you still here dancing? Emma is kind-hearted and only trying to remind you. How could you insult her? Even if Emma isn't Mom and Dad's biological child, she's more obedient and considerate than someone as conniving as you. Emma tugged at Nathaniel's sleeve, feigning a pitiful tone. Brother, it's okay. I really don't mind. As long as you trust me, that's enough. Hearing this, Nathaniel protectively placed her behind him and snapped at me coldly. Apologize to Emma now, or we won't be done here. I raised an eyebrow slightly and glanced at Emma, who was hiding behind him, her smug expression barely concealed. Nathaniel continued to prattle on, his voice grating. Unable to tolerate it any longer, I interrupted him. How did the Wilson family end up raising an idiot like you? Accusations need evidence. This place is full of surveillance cameras. Should I have the manager pull the footage to see who's actually being malicious? At that, Emma's face turned deathly pale. She hastily pulled Nathaniel's hand, her voice laced with exaggerated sweetness. Brother, it's just a small matter. Don't be mad. I'm not upset anymore. Your friends are still waiting for you in the private room. Let's not keep them waiting. Dragging Nathaniel, Emma made a hasty retreat. I had thought that once I left the nightclub, our paths would no longer cross. But when the new school term began, I unexpectedly ran into Emma again at the school the Wilson family had arranged for me. Nanching Dance Academy, the top dance school in the city. After completing my enrollment and reporting to my class, I discovered that Emma was in the adjacent class. Before I could even step into the classroom, Emma approached me with her friends in tow. Among them was Rose, the daughter of the prestigious Mu family in Nanchang. She had always been close to Emma, and the two were inseparable. In my previous life, I was crushed under Nathaniel's heel like a small bread roll and lost the chance to pursue dance. Meanwhile, Emma leveraged the Wilson family's influence to thrive in the dance academy. Knowing my passion for dance, she would deliberately send Rose to provoke me at home. Did you hear? Emma was praised by her teacher in class today. Rose had once gloated. They said she's the future star of the stage. It's such a pity about you. You can't dance anymore. Can you? What a shame. Another time. She bragged. Emma just won another award. Did you know your parents hired a top-notch dance instructor for her? Even covered her tuition fees. Oh, right. I almost forgot. You're stuck at home with your leg injury. How could you possibly know? Again and again, they poured salt into my wounds, relentlessly breaking down my spirit until I spiraled into severe depression. Recalling those moments now, my fists clenched involuntarily. Lost in thought, I didn't notice that Emma and Rose had already walked up to me. How does this school let just anyone enroll? Rose blurted, looking me over from head to toe. She looks so shabby. Not a single designer item on her. Must be broke. What a country bumpkin. Emma, as always, played her innocent role, pulling Rose aside and beginning her performance. Rose, don't say that. She already looks so pitiful. She looks so poor. She probably doesn't even have a dance studio to practice the basics. Rose hooked her arm through Emma's and said sarcastically, "No dance studio? Then how did she get into this school? She must have used some shady means." Right. Rose's loud voice caught the attention of our classmates, who all turned to look in our direction. I lifted my eyes to Emma and said meaningfully, "If I did use shady means to get in, wouldn't Emma know better than anyone? Aren't you two good friends? Why wouldn't you tell her how I got in? Letting her act like a clown here is a bit embarrassing. Don't you think?" Having dealt with Emma in my previous life, I was sure she wouldn't reveal the truth about being a fake heiress. It wouldn't benefit her. Sure enough, as soon as I finished speaking, Rose grabbed Emma's arm and asked, "Emma, what does she mean? Is there something I don't know?" Emma's lips pressed into a thin line, her expression darkening with each of Rose's questions. Frustrated, she stomped her foot, glanced at me irritably, and said, "There's nothing. Don't be fooled by her." I looked at the confused Rose, smirking. "Oh dear, she won't tell you the truth? Looks like she doesn't consider you a real friend." Seeing this, Emma hurriedly pulled Rose into the hallway to whisper about something. They didn't return until class was about to begin. The first major class was group practice, with students from both classes participating together. By chance, Rose and I were assigned to the same group. She raised her chin high, looking at me with disdain. "Country bumpkin. So, you're just a distant relative of the Wilson family, shamelessly clinging to Emma's father to get into this school. I didn't think people like you still existed." Before I could respond, she took advantage of the teacher's distraction to kick me while I was doing a backbend. Thankfully, my foundational skills were solid, so I didn't fall. "Oh, I knew someone like you wouldn't have proper basic skills. Looks like you need more practice," she sneered. Deceived by Emma, Rose thought I was some clingy distant relative of the Wilson family and believed I wouldn't dare escalate the situation. But I wasn't that person. I straightened up, smiled slightly at her, and said, "Do you know what they say about karma?" Rose looked indifferent and was about to retort when I kicked her back the same way. Lacking a solid foundation, she immediately fell to the ground, her forehead hitting the floor with a loud thud, leaving a noticeable bruise. She howled in pain, shouting angrily, "Megan, how dare you kick me? Are you crazy?" The commotion drew the teacher's attention. Approaching us, she frowned and asked, "Why is there so much noise in the middle of class? What's going on with you two?" Rose was quick to complain, but I firmly held my ground. At this moment, Emma suddenly stepped forward. "Teacher, I can testify. I know who started it." She smirked at me smugly, but I calmly pulled out my phone from my bag and silently mouthed to her, "I have a recording." Emma's composure crumbled instantly. She hesitated, her face paling as everyone turned to look at her. "Emma, hurry up and tell us who started it," someone urged. Emma opened her mouth, but under my silent threat, she swallowed her words. I don't know." The teacher frowned. "If you don't know, why did you step in? Go back to your place." Humiliated, Emma bit her lip and stepped back, her face darkening. Rose looked at her in disbelief, clearly upset. "Emma, what's wrong with you? That's so unfair." Emma, however, took 2 steps back, distancing herself from Rose. I don't know what you're talking about. Let's just focus on practice. With that, she returned to her spot. The teacher reassigned partners for Rose and me, separating us. After class, I saw Rose trying to pull Emma aside, but Emma refused. Soon, rumors spread that the two of them had fallen out. I had no time for their petty squabbles. Thanks to my solid foundation, the teacher recommended me for the ballet selection trials just 1 month into the semester. Megan, Nanjing Dance Academy represents the highest level of dance in the province. If you succeed, you'll represent the province in the National Youth Ballet Competition. I believe in you. Encouraged, I worked hard under my teacher's guidance and secured a spot in the top 10 for the campus selections. Unexpectedly, the rarely diligent Emma also made it to the finals. To pick the best candidate, the 10 of us advanced to the semifinals, where audience votes determined the winner. I fought my way to the final round, only to find my votes tied with Emma's. The judges decided on a tiebreaker. Backstage, while preparing for the final round, Emma strutted over to me confidently. I advise you not to try so hard. No matter how much effort you put in, this competition will ultimately be mine. I lazily glanced at him. Are you really that confident? Emma responded with absolute certainty. Of course. Don't tell me you still don't know who the sponsor of this dance competition is? Half of the judges have close ties with my family. This competition was tailor-made for me by my father. You, a mere country bumpkin, will forever be nothing more than my backdrop. As the tiebreaker began, I noticed my biological father, Wilson Robert, had also arrived. He sat confidently in the VIP section, his gaze filled with pride as he watched Emma. However, when he realized her competitor was me, his body stiffened noticeably. Emma chose the classic black swan and, with her solid foundation, earned applause from the judges. Meanwhile, I opted for the more challenging Giselle. During the competition, just as the judges were preparing to score us, a recording suddenly played over the auditorium's broadcast system. You still don't know who the sponsor of this dance competition is? Half of the judges have close ties with my family. This competition was tailor-made for me by my father. You, a mere country bumpkin, will forever be nothing more than my backdrop. The recording caused an uproar in the audience. So what if she's the sponsor's daughter? Does having money mean she can do whatever she wants? If the winner is predetermined, what was all our hard work over the past month for? All this effort, only to serve as her background? This is unfair. Emma's face turned pale. Her eyes were filled with panic, and beads of sweat formed on her forehead. Under the harsh spotlight, her unease was glaringly apparent. Quickly regaining her composure, she turned to glare at me. Megan, it was you, wasn't it? We're competitors, so you set me up, right? You deliberately tricked me into saying those things, edited them maliciously, and are trying to take the spot away from me, aren't you? I spread my hands nonchalantly and shook my head. I'm not like you. One face in public and another in private. Besides, this recording came from the broadcasting room. I've been backstage the whole time, preparing for the competition. How would I even have the chance to frame you? Emma opened her mouth to retort, but my dance teacher interjected. I can vouch for Megan. She's been busy preparing for the competition and had no time for such things. To control the situation, the school administrators quickly reviewed the broadcasting room's surveillance footage. Unexpectedly, the person who stabbed Emma in the back was none other than her former best friend, Rose. Emma stared at Rose in disbelief. It was you? Why would you do this to me? Rose gave her a cold look. I used to think we were best friends, but I've recently realized you've always treated me like a fool. You made me help you deal with Megan, yet when trouble arose, you didn't lift a finger to stand up for me. In the end, you were just using me as a scapegoat. Emma, if you walk along the riverbank often enough, you're bound to get your shoes wet. What's happening to you today is your own doing. Due to the incident, Emma naturally lost her qualification to compete. Even though she was the sponsor's daughter, the school leadership, for the sake of its reputation, had no choice but to disqualify her. In the end, I secured the spot to represent the province in the national ballet competition. Holding my certificate of achievement, I was brimming with joy as I prepared to head home. However, at the school gate, I encountered my biological father, Wilson Robert. He leaned against a Maybach with one hand in his pocket. When he saw me emerge, he immediately straightened up. "Megan, I never knew you were so talented in dance. You've really impressed me today." Wilson Robert, a seasoned businessman, always knew how to project a facade. Adjusting his finely tailored suit, he patted me on the shoulder, his gestures brimming with apparent goodwill. But his calculating eyes betrayed his true intentions. In my past life, Wilson Robert often spoke to me with the same attitude, as if I were a beloved child nurtured by his care. It was precisely because I trusted him too much that I was ultimately manipulated by their family into signing the organ donation consent form. Remembering this, I instinctively took 2 steps back to maintain my distance. "Is there something you need? If not, I'll be leaving." Wilson Robert awkwardly withdrew his hand and forced a smile. "Actually, it's nothing urgent. I saw you won the competition and thought it'd be nice for you to come to the Wilson family's home this weekend for a meal with everyone." I tilted my head slightly, enunciating the words with everyone deliberately. "Mr. Wilson, have you forgotten? I took $20 million from you not long ago. From that point on, we have no ties. I won't be going back to the Wilson family." Unperturbed, Wilson Robert reached into his pocket and handed me a card. "No need to decide right away. After all, you carry the Wilson family's blood. Our family has extensive investments, including in the dance field. If you ever face difficulties in your dance career, you can always come to me for help." Wilson Robert, being the profit-driven businessman he was, had shifted his ambitions to me after Emma's disqualification. I took the card and handed it back to him with a raised eyebrow. "Mr. Wilson, blatantly offering me money like this. Aren't you worried about hurting your precious adopted daughter's feelings?" Wilson Robert gave a faint smile. "Emma's just immature. We've spoiled her. I'll discipline her when I get back." Before he could finish his sentence, the sound of a thermos hitting the ground came from behind him. Emma stood at a distance, glaring at me furiously before turning and running off. Since I was selected to represent South City in the national competition, my dance teacher began giving me one-on-one training. Amidst my hectic schedule, a rumor suddenly broke out online that I was the true heiress of the Wilson family. Anonymous users exposed the truth about how Emma and I had been switched at birth, and even posted a paternity test report between me and Wilson Robert. Soon after, a photo of Emma crouched alone in a corner, crying, went viral. Beneath it, someone stoked the narrative, implying that as the returned true heiress, I had forced Emma, the fake heiress, out of the Wilson family. Ignorant internet warriors began berating me in the comments, piling on in outrage. The teacher, worried that this might affect my performance, showed me the post and asked if I wanted to clarify things publicly. I shook my head. These people aren't worth my energy. I don't care to explain myself to irrelevant individuals. But they wouldn't let it go. A furious Nathaniel stormed into the practice room and dragged me out, demanding in a cold tone, "Megan, how could you be so dishonest? You took $20 million from Dad and promised you'd never reveal Emma's real identity. Yet here you are, going back on your word. How despicable." I shook off his hand forcefully, unwilling to argue with him. "I didn't do it, and you shouldn't be accusing me." Nathaniel clearly didn't believe me. "You think I'd still trust anything you say? You liar. It's because of you breaking your promise that Emma developed depression. She's in the hospital receiving treatment. Come with me now and apologize to her." I found his logic ridiculous. Just as I turned to leave, some burly men he brought with him tied me up and stuffed me into the back seat of a car. When Nathaniel brought me into Emma's hospital room, she was curled up in Jane's arms, eating an apple. The moment she saw me, her emotions erupted. She knocked over the fruit tray and huddled in a corner, trembling and tearful, looking completely unhinged. "Get her out. I don't want to see her. She's here to kill me. She's going to drive me to death." Seeing Emma in such a state, Jane's heart ached. She stormed over and slapped me across the face. "Megan, are you satisfied now? Is this the result you wanted?" She grabbed the bottle of pills from Emma's bedside and hurled it at me. "If you hadn't exposed Emma's background online, she wouldn't have fallen into depression. Now she has to take a handful of pills every day because of you. Doesn't your conscience hurt for what you've done?" Let me tell you, I'll never acknowledge you. You'll never be part of this family. Picking up the pills, I couldn't help but chuckle. You're saying she's depressed. And these are the pills the doctor prescribed. Jane glared at me angrily. Isn't that obvious enough for you? Ignoring her, I took one of the pills, popped it into my mouth, and chewed it slowly. A faintly sour and minty taste spread across my tongue. In my past life, I'd taken plenty of antidepressants and knew them like the back of my hand. The pills Emma was taking weren't medication at all. They were swapped-out vitamin tablets. Her so-called depression was a complete sham. I called Emma's attending doctor over. Initially, he insisted that Emma did indeed have depression. But when I took out my phone and pretended to call the police, his stance quickly changed. With the bottle of pills in hand, I said, "If you don't tell the truth, we can settle this at the station. We'll see if your medical license survives this." Fearing for his license, the doctor confessed everything. It turned out Emma had bribed him to issue a fake diagnosis of depression to garner sympathy and attention from the Wilson family. When the truth came to light, Nathaniel confronted Emma. "Why did you do this?" Tearfully huddled in the corner, Emma sobbed. "Brother, I was just scared that you'd all leave me for Megan." She said she didn't want to come back, but she still secretly met with Dad. And Dad even gave her money. You all just want her back." I was afraid. I couldn't help but sneer. "Relax. That family you hold so dear means nothing to me. A mother and brother who don't trust me? They only disgust me." As I left the hospital, Nathaniel chased after me. "Even if Emma faked her depression, that doesn't mean you had nothing to do with what happened online. If you ever hurt Emma, I won't let you get away with it." I rolled my eyes. "Dear Mr. Wilson, if you have time to threaten me, why not use it to investigate who hired those online trolls? With the Wilson family's wealth and influence, a little problem like this shouldn't be too hard for you." A week later, Nathaniel called me. His voice was hesitant. "About before, I might have misjudged you." I didn't bother responding. "If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up." Desperate to keep me on the line, he shouted, "Wait. After all, we're still family. You're still my sister." I cut him off with a cold laugh. "Doesn't your face hurt, Mr. Wilson?" Of course, I knew from the start that everything online was just another one of Emma's ploys. The information wasn't something just anyone could access. First, I thought Jane might have done it, but after investigating, I found it all traced back to Emma herself. I quietly had someone leak the news. Nathaniel called me, and Detective D also followed the trail to uncover the truth. After that, the Wilson family didn't bother me for a long time. I focused on training, waking up earlier than the roosters and sleeping later than the dogs. Through sheer effort, 3 months later, I won the national championship and qualified to represent my country at the Asian International Ballet Competition. When the news reached Nanchang, my adoptive mother somehow managed to contact me. "Megan, now that you've made something of yourself, it's time you repay me. I hear a lot of brands want you for endorsements, and one ad can earn you tens of thousands. I raised you for 18 years with great difficulty. Now that I'm old, you should take care of me. Your brother just got out of prison. It's time for him to settle down, but he still doesn't have a house or car. You should help him out." I refused her outright. The next day, she uploaded a recording of our phone conversation online. Overnight, the headlines accused me of being ungrateful and abandoning the person who raised me. The incident affected me deeply. The competition not only evaluates the dancer's technical performance, but also considers their classroom training assessments. To advance, both are weighed comprehensively. However, negative rumors before the competition can inevitably sway the judges. That afternoon, my dance instructor approached me with a heavy heart. "Megan, you really should clarify this matter." I knew that the scars left on me in the past would eventually be exposed. After a night of turmoil, I logged into my private account the next morning and published the evidence I had long saved, detailing the abuse I endured at the hands of my adoptive mother and David. I also reached out to friends in Nanchang who were familiar with my situation to testify and reveal her true face to the public. The clarification post immediately garnered widespread attention. The adoptive mother, who thought she could ruin me with one recording, suddenly became a target of public scorn. Severing ties with her, I felt a great sense of relief, performing at my best. I won the gold medal in the competition and was noticed by the lead dancer of the Asian Ballet Company, who accepted me as their final disciple. When I returned to Nanchang, my biological parents reached out to meet me. As soon as Jane saw me, she began sobbing softly. "Megan, I'm sorry. I saw the news online and didn't realize the kind of life you had before. If your adoptive mother treated you so poorly, why didn't you tell us?" I looked at her tears coldly, unmoved. "There's nothing to say. If you don't have anything important, please stop disturbing me." Wilson Robert sighed, trying to ease the atmosphere. "We're family. Don't be so distant. Megan, from now on, the Wilson family is your home. Whenever you want to come back, we'll welcome you. I've already dealt with your adoptive mother for you. She and her daughter probably can't stay in Nanchang anymore." I didn't acknowledge their gesture. Their kindness only felt ironic to me. "There's no need to return to the Wilson family. That's not my home." I turned to leave, catching a glimpse of Emma standing outside the restaurant door with reddened eyes. That night, the Wilson family faced a calamity. Confidential documents from the Wilson Corporation were stolen, and their businesses suffered coordinated attacks from competitors. The prominent family in Nanchang crumbled overnight. Later, I learned through others that Emma, feeling neglected as her adoptive parents treated me kindly, sold the Wilson Corporation's secrets to retaliate. This led to their downfall. The Wilson Corporation's capital chain broke, and Wilson Robert, who had some involvement in illegal activities, was prosecuted and imprisoned. Nathaniel took over as the company's president but, lacking the ability, squandered everything within 6 months, accumulating enormous debts. Jane, overwhelmed with grief, fell seriously ill and was later diagnosed with kidney failure. She needed a transplant to survive. Though Emma was a match, she refused to donate. "I won't agree to something that harms my body. You can forget about it," she said coldly. Enraged, Nathaniel threw Emma out of the house. Without a donor, Jane was left to await death. Before she passed, she called me, her voice trembling and weak. "Megan, I had a dream. In it, Nathaniel broke your leg, ignored your depression, and even forced you to donate your kidney to Emma. I think what's happening to the Wilson family now is karma." I remained silent for a long time before letting out a chuckle. That wasn't a dream. It all happened. The Wilson family's downfall is indeed karma. Jane kept apologizing over the phone until I hung up. She passed away that night. At her funeral, Nathaniel's creditors came knocking. In his rush to escape, he collided with a large truck at an intersection, losing a leg and becoming wheelchair-bound, living on social welfare. When Emma learned of the Wilson family's fall, she tried to return to her biological mother. However, her adoptive mother and David, having been suppressed by the Wilson family, had already moved to another city. Emma shamelessly followed them there. But she was used to a pampered life and couldn't adapt to the demanding work at a department store. Within 3 months, she ran off with a frequent customer, a young man with dyed yellow hair. 5 years later, I returned to Nanchang with over a dozen students, planning to open my own dance academy. At the government office submitting documents, I saw Emma at the next counter with her 3 children, finalizing her divorce from her delinquent husband. My former dance teacher, now my business partner, stood beside me. Seeing Emma, now a haggard and ordinary housewife, he shook his head. She had a good hand but played it terribly. I paused and chuckled softly. Who hasn't made a mess of their life? The key is learning to stand up again. I once yearned for recognition and a place to call home, but over time, I realized the world belongs to oneself, and others are irrelevant. When water reaches its limit, it becomes a waterfall. When people hit rock bottom, they are reborn. The wilderness God gives you is meant to make you soar like an eagle.